Slam. The heavy, exquisitely carved oak door, the very one I signed the check for 3 years ago, shut right in my face. The sound of the deadbolt turning echoed dryly, like someone chambering around. I stood there, planted on the cold marble steps. The late afternoon wind in Atlanta hit my face, bringing with it street grit and a type of humiliation I had never tasted in my life. My hand was still clenched around the strap of my old duffel bag. Inside, I only carried a few faded changes of clothes and a pair of worn sandals with a broken strap. Just 10 seconds earlier, my eldest son, the pride of the Jefferson name, Preston, had been standing in that threshold. He wore a crisp Brioni suit, a jacket whose value alone could feed a working-class family for 3 months. And he looked at me with those eyes, the kind you reserve for looking at vomit on the sidewalk. "Dad, don't make a fool of yourself in front of the neighbors." His voice hissed between his teeth without an ounce of respect. "That poverty smell will cling to my $5,000 suit. Go beg somewhere else. This isn't a charity." Man, that line felt like a bucket of boiling water had been thrown in my face. "Hi. Clarence Jefferson, the man who worked sunup to sundown, who hauled sacks of cement until my nails bled to build this empire, was now being cast out like a stray dog by the son I raised." I lowered my gaze to my shoes, old leather shoes with worn-down heels that I'd deliberately pulled from the back of the closet. The sole was open and caked with mud. Maybe Preston was right. I looked pathetic right now, but he didn't know this outward misery was just theater. The misery in his soul, that was the real tragedy. My tears didn't fall. At 68 years old, tears are a luxury. They slid inward, salty as acid, slowly corroding my gut. I sold my grandparents' land so he could study architecture in Europe. I bought him this house, his car, and I even secured him the creative director position he's sitting in now by calling in old favors. And now the price I receive is a closed door. I took a deep breath, trying to control the tremor running through my limbs. I wasn't shaking from the cold, but from rage. They say, raise crows and they'll peck out your eyes. But this performance is just beginning. Preston, you think your daddy is finished? You've got it all wrong. I turned my back on the luxurious Buckhead mansion and shuffled down the street. My shadow stretched long over the sidewalk, lonely and distorted. I needed to find a place to sit and calm down and remember how in the world this whole crazy idea started. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments below. It all started 3 days ago. That day I called an urgent family meeting at my old house, the place where my children grew up before flying off to more sophisticated horizons. To prepare for this role of a lifetime, I had to rummage through the dusty basement. I found a shirt with a frayed collar from when I drove the material truck, and some khaki pants faded at the knees. I didn't even shave for 3 days to look as haggard and miserable as possible. When Preston, Nia, and Marcus were present, I sat hunched over in the old armchair, my hands trembling as I held a glass of water. "Dad, what's up? Why the urgent call?" "I have a big meeting," Preston said, glancing at his watch with a look of impatience. "Yeah, Dad. I have to go pick up little Skylar from her piano lesson." Naya, my second child, followed suit. She sat on the edge of the chair as if afraid the dust of this old house would cling to her expensive silk dress. Only Marcus, my youngest son, the mechanic, remained quiet. He stared at me, his eyes full of genuine concern. "Dad, are you sick? You look awful." I coughed a couple of times, trying to fake the frailty of a cornered man. "Children," my voice broke, shaky. Your father is so sorry." I've lost everything. A sepulchral silence fell over the room. The ceiling fan whirred, making a rhythmic noise that could be heard clearly. How do you mean you lost everything? Naya asked, in a high-pitched voice, unable to hide her panic. You mean the money? I nodded, hanging my head. A partner swindled me. He took all the capital I invested in that Phantom Resort project. And not only that, I co-signed as collateral for his loan shark debts. Now the mob is looking for me. The chain of 5 home improvement stores, this house, my retirement savings, everything has been foreclosed on. What? Preston leaped from his seat, his face red with anger. Are you kidding me? All those years in the business? How could you be so stupid? Why didn't you consult me? I wanted to make a little more to leave for you, I mumbled, trying to force a tear. Now I'm ruined. I need a temporary place to stay, just a small corner, until I can sort things out with my lawyer. I looked up, meeting the eyes of each of my children. I hoped for a reassuring squeeze of the hand, a word of comfort, or at least a, "Don't worry, Dad, we've got you." But no, God bless it. All I received was a deadly silence. I saw Preston's eyes shift from side to side. He was doing calculations. I saw Naya shrink back, clutching her Chanel bag as if afraid I would pounce and steal it to pay my debts. In their eyes there was no compassion, only an absolute fear. The fear of having to carry the burden of this old man's debts. I had already seen the bottom of these vultures' souls. They were only waiting for me to die, to divide the inheritance, and they certainly didn't want to support a debt-ridden old man. Only Marcus tried to speak, but before he could, Preston's phone rang. He used the excuse to step outside to answer. And then Naya also avoided my gaze. The meeting ended in a forced atmosphere. They left without promising anything, only saying, "Let us go home and discuss it." And today, I came to get the answer. Returning to the present, after Preston threw me out, I sat on a stone bench in a nearby park, ignoring the curious glances of the passers-by. My mind replayed the scene from a moment ago at Preston's house. Before he opened the door to dismiss me, I had been standing outside the gate and heard him and his wife arguing through the half-open living room window. "Are you crazy?" Tiffany, Preston's wife, shrieked sharply. "You're going to let that old man stay here, and then the collectors are going to come wreck the house? I just redecorated the living room. It came out and it was $25,000. You want those thugs to come graffiti the walls?" "But he's my dad," Preston replied weakly, without any conviction. "What dad?" Tiffany cut him off, her voice sharp as a razor. "A father who lets his kids carry his debt doesn't deserve to be a father. Besides, there's no room in the house. I already turned the only spare bedroom into my home gym and yoga studio. Where do you plan for your dad to sleep? On the sofa? And when guests come over and see a raggedy old man sprawled out there, won't you be embarrassed?" I was outside the gate, clinging to the cold iron bars. That's my daughter-in-law. She forgets that the gym she works out in, the sofa she sits on, everything was purchased with the money I gifted them when they inaugurated the house. Preston's voice sounded more decisive this time. "You're right. He can't stay here. Tell him to go to Nia's place. Her house is also big, and her husband works at the bank. He'll surely know how to handle these debt issues." And that was it. He came out, opened the door, and kicked me out with the excuse that the house was too small and because of my poverty smell. Their house has 4 bedrooms. It's just the 2 of them, and a son who's away at boarding school. Too small. That's the most pathetic excuse I've ever heard. I smiled bitterly, a twisted grimace on my old face. "Very well, Preston. Your gym is more important than your old father. I'm going to remember this very well. I'm going to jot it down in the ledger of life. And I swear, the interest I charge you will be higher than any bank in the world. I stood up, brushing the dust off my pants. The sky was beginning to cloud over. It looked like a storm was coming. The July rains in Atlanta usually arrive fast and furious. Next stop, Nia's house, my spoiled little girl, the daughter for whom in the past, whenever she cried because she was being bullied, I would leave any important meeting to go pick her up from school and buy her an ice cream cone. Will my princess open the doors of her castle to receive this dethroned old king? Or will she also drop the curtain and send me away? I have hope, a fragile sliver of hope that still remains. I no longer have a car. My beloved black Escalade was safely tucked away in the secret garage of a close friend, the only one who knew about this plan. Now my only means of transportation were my old legs and public transit. I walked toward the bus stop. It had been over 20 years since I'd ridden a bus. A feeling of strangeness and fear washed over me. The bus arrived, packed with people. The smell of sweat, cheap food, and fatigue filled the cramped space. I pushed my way through to find a place to stand, gripping the sticky metal pole tightly. A heavily tattooed guy looked at me defiantly and shoved my shoulder, a push that hurt me to my core, to make his way to the exit. I was about to unleash a curse out of old habit. "Are you blind, kid?" But I held back. I was now a weak, bankrupt old man. I had to swallow my pride. The bus rattled down the busy streets. I looked out the window and saw the fancy restaurants where I used to take my partners for dinner. I saw the shiny cars speeding past. The world outside kept turning, still rich. Only I was adrift toward the bottom of society. Even though it was fake, the feeling of being marginalized truly hurt. The sky broke. Raindrops, fat as corn kernels, lashed against the window. Ania's house is in Sandy Springs, the new money area. I got off at the nearest stop, but I still had to walk over a mile to get there without an umbrella. I didn't dare take a taxi because I only had some loose change left in my pocket. I had to play the role of the ruined man well. I walked under the rain, head bowed. The ice-cold water soaked through my thin shirt. My broken shoes were waterlogged and made an obnoxious slosh-slosh sound with every step. The wind blew hard, making me shiver. The cold sinking into the bones of a 68-year-old man is no joke. My joints were starting to ache, but the cold in my body was nothing compared to the cold in my soul. I remembered the day of Nia's graduation. It was also pouring rain. I stood holding the umbrella for her for 2 hours so she could take pictures with her friends. I ended up drenched, but I smiled happily because my daughter looked radiant and beautiful. Today, I come to her house, not to hold her umbrella, but to ask her for a roof over my head. I arrived in front of Nia's gate, a modern mansion with glass walls and imposing security fences. I rang the doorbell. The sound echoed clearly. I stood huddled, rainwater dripping from my hair into my face, salty like tears. 5 minutes passed before the door cracked open, but it didn't open all the way. The security chain was still on, leaving only a crack of about 4 inches. Nia's face appeared through the opening. She was heavily made up, wearing sparkling pearl earrings. She looked at me with wide eyes of surprise that quickly turned to annoyance. "Dad, what are you doing here at this hour?" She didn't ask if I was cold. "Why, Nia, I'm freezing," I said, teeth chattering. "Preston kicked me out. Let me in for a bit to warm up. I'm only asking for a place to stay for a few days." Naya nervously looked side to side, as if afraid the neighbors would see her. Dad, I can't. My husband is entertaining important guests inside. They're his bosses from the bank. They're very demanding. If you come in looking like that, you're a mess. My husband will be mortified. Mortified? I repeated, my voice breaking. I'm your father, Nia. I raised you. And now that I've fallen on hard times, are you afraid? I'll embarrass you. Naya frowned impatiently. Dad, don't be dramatic. If your business went bad, it's your fault. You're a grown man. The one who has the guts to get rich has the guts to handle the losses. Isn't that what you taught me? You have to take responsibility. I can't let your debts affect my family's reputation. She rattled it all off like a machine. Cold, cruel words, coming from the same lips that used to kiss my cheek to ask for gifts when she was a child. Go to a cheap motel somewhere, Naya said, rummaging through her designer purse. Here, I'll give you some money. She pulled out a blue bill, a $50 bill, a little more than a cheap handout. She rolled up the bill and slipped it through the narrow crack, afraid to touch my wet, dirty hands. The bill fell to the ground, right into a puddle of murky water at my feet. Grab it, Dad, and take a cab somewhere else. Don't just stand there. If the neighborhood security cameras film you, it'll be a problem. Once you stabilize, I'll call you. Slam. The door shut abruptly. The sound of the deadbolt locking echoed again. I stood paralyzed, looking at the $50 bill soaking wet, floating in the mud. $50. That's the value this father holds for her. I remembered that to buy her high school graduation dress, I had to sell the watch my father bequeathed to me. I remembered the sleepless nights when she had a high fever. I remembered everything, but she had forgotten it all. Shame, a humiliating shame, rose up to my throat. I bent down. A thought crossed my mind. Pick it up, Clarence. You're playing the part of the poor man. Poor people need money. But no. My hand remained rigid. A man's, a father's. Pride would not allow me to bow my head for this cheap alms from my children. I raised my foot, and with the sole of my mud-covered shoe, I forcefully stepped on that $50 bill. I ground it into the floor, crushing that false affection. Very well, Naya, I murmured under the rain, my own tears mixing with the salty water. I'm going to return these $50 to you, but the price you pay will be 1,000,000 times higher. I turned around and walked toward the curtain of gray rain. I had nowhere left to go. My exemplary children, my pride and joy, had all slammed the door in my face. Now only one last address remained, the address I had ignored for the last 3 years. The home of Marcus, the slow, youngest son who works as a mechanic, and Aisha, that humble daughter-in-law whom I despise so much. Will that door open, or will I have to sleep under a bridge tonight? I dragged my feet toward the bus stop, my heart heavy as a stone. This painful theater is coming to an end. But before it does, I have to hit rock bottom. I sat down, faint, at the dilapidated bus stop, waiting for Route 199 that heads to the South DeKalb suburbs, that place city folks jokingly call the Forgotten District. As I waited, I looked down at my hands. The yellowish light of the street lamp illuminated them, highlighting the bulging veins and age spots, my calloused hands. All my life, I've been proud of these hands. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. My dad was a bricklayer. My mom sold sweet potato pies at the market. By the age of 12, I was already on the construction site mixing cement. By 20, my hands were rough like the bark of an old oak from hauling so many heavy bags. Precisely because of the trauma of poverty, of the smell of sour sweat and scarce meals, I swore my children wouldn't suffer. I went after money like a maniac. I opened the material store, bid on contracts. I worked sunup to sundown. I succeeded. I managed to wash the smell of poverty out of my life, but perhaps my biggest mistake started there. I saw Preston and Nia as my perfect works of art. Light-skinned, soft hands, speaking French and Spanish like it was nothing. They knew how to hold a wine glass, how to knot a silk tie. I invested all my best in them, forbidding them to touch heavy labor. Leave that. I'll do it. Your hands are for holding a pen, for signing contracts, not for carrying bricks. I yelled at Preston once when he tried to help me clean the warehouse at 15. And what was the result? I created beautiful porcelain dolls, empty inside. People who only know how to enjoy the fruits, without knowing the value of the sweat. And Marcus, my poor youngest son, he's the one who looks most like me. Rough, quiet. Academics weren't his thing, but he loved metal and oil. He preferred getting under a car to being in the air conditioning. How disappointed I was in him at the time. Every time I saw him with clothes stained with grease, I saw my own miserable past returning. I was afraid of that image, so I scorned him. I scolded him. You embarrass me. Look at your siblings, executive directors. And you, a low-level mechanic? You think you'll spend your life crawling under other people's cars? Those words now returned, stabbing my heart like 1,000 needles. I denied my own essence by denying Marcus. I adored false appearances and kicked true honesty to the curb. Buswin 199 arrived, roaring, releasing a cloud of black smoke in my face. I coughed, choking. I adjusted my cloth bag and got on. This trip will take me back to the past, to my greatest mistake. In the packed bus, the penetrating body odor mixed with the loud hip-hop blasting from the driver's old speaker. I huddled in a back corner, trying not to draw attention. My mind traveled again to 3 years ago, the day Marcus brought Aisha to introduce her. Aisha didn't have that elegant beauty like Preston's wife. She was small, sun-darkened skin, with hands rough from working hard since she was a child. She worked cleaning for a maintenance company. That day, Aisha wore a simple floral dress bought at the flea market, and with trembling hands, she held a basket of inexpensive fruit to give me as a gift. And what did I do? I didn't even deign to accept the basket. I sat with my legs crossed on my Italian leather sofa, looking down my nose at her. Did you think this through, Marcus? I asked my son in front of his girlfriend, my voice full of scorn. Why bring this pauper to the house? Does she want you, or does she want the construction magnate's last name? I know that story. These girls just wanted to hit the jackpot to get out of poverty. Aisha cried, lowering her face, and the tears fell onto her old canvas shoes. She didn't say a single word in reply, only squeezed Marcus's hand tightly. Marcus, for the first time in his life, dared to raise his voice at me. Dad, you have no right to insult her. Aisha is a good woman. She loved me when I was just a helper with a miserable salary. Good woman. Nothing. Birds of a feather. If you marry her, don't set foot in this house again. I won't accept a daughter-in-law who scrubs toilets for a living. That was the last sentence I said to them before kicking both of them out. For 3 years, I kept that venomous promise. I didn't go to their wedding. I only coldly sent an envelope with money out of obligation. When they had the baby, or during the holidays, they kept sending gifts, sometimes a bottle of herbal liqueur, sometimes a scarf Aisha knitted. What did I do with those gifts? I threw them in the trash or gave them to the house staff. Cheap junk, I used to say, making a face. My God, now that I think about it, I'm disgusted with myself. An arrogant, stupid old man, blinded by money, I judged. People by the label on their clothes, by their job, forgetting that my own mother also sold food on the street to raise me. Now that I'm ruined, when my high society children kicked me to the curb, here I am, with the nerve, looking for the daughter-in-law who scrubs toilets, the one I insulted. She's going to laugh in my face. She'll grab the mop to sweep me up out the door, just like I kicked her out. If she does, I deserve it. That's karma. The bus stopped at the last stop, South DeKalb. This is the place people from the city rarely dare to enter at night. Narrow labyrinthine alleys, houses with tin roofs, electrical wires tangled like cobwebs overhead. The rain hadn't stopped completely. Only a freezing drizzle remained. The road to Marcus's house was full of mud. The drainage here is terrible. Every time it rains, the street turns into a river. I rolled up my pants, stumbling through the black puddles. A skinny, stray dog barked at me, chasing me, as some young men were gathered on the corner, smoking, looking at me suspiciously. "Hey boss, you lost? Got $1 for the crew?" one yelled. My heart pounded. A mile a minute. I lowered my head and walked faster. I had a stun gun in my pocket for safety, a cautious businessman's habit, but I hoped I wouldn't have to use it. I passed rows of houses glued together, shouts from couples fighting, children crying, the noise of the TV coming out of windowless openings. The stench of the sewer was strong. This is where my son and daughter-in-law live. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. While I lived in a 5,000 square foot mansion with daily maid service, my son had to live in this place where even the air smells like poverty. I punished him because he didn't obey me. I cut off his help, leaving him to his fate. And he has survived here for 3 years, without a single complaint, without reaching out to ask me for a cent. The regret weighed on my feet. I wanted to turn around and run. I wanted to call my driver to take me to a 5-star hotel, take a hot shower, and forget this brutal reality. But I couldn't. I had to get to the heart of the truth. I needed to know if a little bit of humanity still existed in this hell. I stopped in front of a small house at the end of a dead-end alley. The walls were peeling, revealing the dull red bricks. The tin roof was rusty. At the entrance was a pile of old tires, a sign that a mechanic lived there. "This is Marcus's house." I stood in front of the door, hesitating for 5 minutes. I would raise my hand and lower it again. The arrogance of a father who once spit fire had now shrunk to the size of an ant. I was afraid. Afraid of seeing the look of triumph on Aisha's face, afraid of Marcus's coldness. If this door also closed, my life as a father would have been a total failure. Knock, knock, knock. I knocked softly. The faint sound was drowned out by the rain. No one answered. I knocked harder. Boom, boom. The sound of house shoes dragging inside could be heard. The heavy sound of the deadbolt opening. The door opened with the sinister squeak of unoiled hinges. The person who opened it was Aisha. She looked the same as the last time I saw her, only a little older, with wrinkles around her eyes. She wore an apron full of grease and stains, and in her hand she still carried a cleaning rag. She must have just gotten home from work, or was cleaning. Aisha squinted into the darkness, trying to recognize the man, soaked through like soup, who was huddled in front of her door. "Who is it?" "We're not buying anything," she said in a tired voice. I lifted my face. The yellow light from inside illuminated my haggard face. "Aisha, it's Dad." My voice sounded hoarse, like cracking stones. Aisha froze, her eyes wide as saucers. The rag fell from her hand. "Dad! Mr. Clarence!" she exclaimed with an incredulous surprise. "Good heavens, what happened to you? Why are you soaking wet?" I observed her face closely. I was looking for the mockery. That little smile of "you" finally fell too. But there was nothing. Absolutely no malicious satisfaction. Only pure panic and concern. "Were you robbed? Or did you have an accident?" Aisha quickly stepped out onto the porch without caring that she was getting wet and grabbed my ice-cold arm. Her rough hand felt strangely warm. "Daughter, I'm ruined," I stammered, following the script, but the emotion was real. "Your siblings kicked me out. I have nowhere to go." I waited for judgment, but Aisha said nothing. She turned and yelled inside. "Marcus, come quick! Your dad's here." "Oh, Lord, he's shaking with cold." Then she forcefully pulled me inside, as if afraid that if she delayed a second longer, I would collapse in the rain. "Come in, Dad. Hurry up. The house is a little messy. Be careful not to trip." The moment I crossed the threshold of Aisha's house, I felt as if I had returned from death to life. Not because the house was nice. In fact, it was very poor. It smelled of motor oil and cheap food. But because of the way that scorned daughter-in-law received me. She didn't see a failed old man. She only saw a father who was cold. Inside, the house was much narrower than I imagined. The living room barely fit an old wooden table. On the wall hung a few family photos and a small framed print of the Serenity Prayer with a simple wooden cross below it. The corner was full of motorcycle parts, tires, and tools. Marcus shot out of the kitchen. He was limping on his left leg. It was from a work accident last year that I had heard rumors about but never asked. When he saw me standing in the middle of the living room, dripping water onto the old tile floor, Marcus almost dropped the soup ladle. "Dad," he cried, his voice breaking. He lunged toward me. He was going to hug me, but he stopped himself when he saw his grease-stained clothes, afraid of getting me dirty. "Why didn't you call so I could come and get you? How did you get here? Oh my God, your lips are blue." He turned to his wife, shouting desperately, "Aisha, get a towel, the biggest one, and make some hot ginger tea with lots of sugar, so Dad can get his strength back." Aisha had already run to the room and immediately returned with an old but clean cotton towel that smelled like sunshine. She put it over my shoulders, rubbing my back hard to warm me up. "Sit here, Dad." Marcus pulled a wooden chair over and quickly wiped the seat with the edge of his shirt. "Take off that wet shirt, please." I sat down, feeling the warmth of the towel and the concern of my two children spreading through my body. I looked at them, a poor couple, in stained clothes, in a house with a leaky roof. But the way they were tending to me was better than for a king. "Children," I began the story, trying to keep my voice tragic. "I went broke. I was scammed. I lost everything. I'm riddled with debt. I went to Preston's and Nia's houses, but they wouldn't let me in. They're afraid of getting splashed." Marcus was kneeling, taking off my soaked shoes. Hearing that, his hands paused for an instant. He looked up at me with sad eyes, but without surprise. "My siblings, they've always been like that," he said softly. "But listen, we'll worry about that later. Money comes and goes. The important thing is that you're safe, Dad." "But I owe a lot of money," I insisted, testing him one more time. "The mob is looking for me. If I stay here, they might come and bother you." Aisha placed the steaming cup of ginger tea in my hands. She crouched down next to her husband, looking me straight in the eyes. "Dad," Aisha said with strange calm, "in this neighborhood, there isn't a house that doesn't owe money. We're used to it. If you came here, you came home. Our house is humble, the water gets in, but the deadbolt is strong. If those mobsters want to come in and take you, they'll have to go through us first." Man, that sentence from that small daughter-in-law left me speechless. No hesitation, no calculations of what was most convenient for her. "Your house is very small." I looked around, feeling a lump in my throat. "I'm going to be a lot of trouble for you." "Trouble? Nothing, Marcus let out a hearty laugh, a kind smile identical to his mother's. "We have a bedroom and a living room here. We sleep in the bedroom with little Tony. And that small room in the back, I used to keep tools there, but it's spacious, and after we eat dinner, I'll clear it out. We'll put a mattress in there, and you'll sleep like a king. I'm just afraid you won't get used to it, that my house will smell bad to you." "No." I shook my head frantically, and the tears finally burst out, hot, rolling down my cheeks. "It doesn't smell bad. Your house smells wonderful. It smells like family love." For the first time in years, I cried in front of my children. They weren't fake tears from the theater, but tears of late repentance and overflowing happiness. I had found the real treasure of my life right in this shabby place I so despised. Marcus took my trembling hands. His calloused hands squeezed mine, also calloused, tightly. "Drink your tea, Dad, so you can warm up. Today we're having red beans and rice with smoked sausage. It's simple, but Aisha makes it delicious. Eat with us." I nodded, raising the cup to drink a sip. The sweet, spicy flavor of the ginger went down to my stomach. Outside, it was still pouring rain. The wind whistled through the cracks in the window. But in here, I felt warmer than with any expensive electric fireplace in Preston's mansion. My play was halfway done. I had seen the depth of human ingratitude and also the height of true love. But the story doesn't end here. Tomorrow, Preston and Nia will find out I'm here. And I know those vultures won't rest easy. They'll come, not to take me in, but to mock me and completely wash their hands of me. That's fine, let them come. Because tomorrow, when the sun rises, the curtain will fall, and the finale will be an earthquake. The entire Jefferson family will never forget. Aisha led me to the back of the house. It was a small tin-roofed patio where Marcus had his makeshift workshop. The smell of burnt oil, gasoline, and rust hit my nose hard. Before, if I had smelled this, I would have wrinkled my nose in scorn and called it the odor of the lower class. But today, strangely, it gave me a sense of security. In one corner of the patio was a small room with thin pressed wood walls, and the door was only an old floral fabric curtain. "Dad," Aisha said in an apologetic voice, lifting the curtain. "This is Marcus's parts storage. I gave it a quick wipe down just now, but it's still very messy. Dad, I hope you don't mind." I entered. The room was no more than 60 square feet. It had no windows, only a small vent high up. Marcus had placed an old foam mattress on the floor, and beside it, a small fan buzzed, trying to push out the stifling heat and the stale air smell. On the wall, instead of expensive art prints like at Preston's house, hung wrenches and pliers. A bare light bulb emitted a weak yellow light, but I noticed a detail that tugged at my heart. On that old mattress, Aisha had made the bed with the nicest sheet set they owned. White sheets with embroidered roses, the kind, I assumed, they only used for special occasions. She had also sprayed some inexpensive air freshener in the room to hide the oil smell, and on a turned-over cardboard box that served as a nightstand, there was a glass of water and a blister pack of flu pills. "I was afraid you'd catch a cold from the rain, Dad," Aisha explained, when she saw me looking at the medicine. "Take one first so you don't get sick." I turned to look at my daughter-in-law, a small, thin woman with dark circles under her eyes from the worry of earning a living. She stood timidly, afraid that I would criticize this little shack. "Thank you, daughter. Thank you, Aisha," I said, my voice trembling. "This place is very nice, much better than having to sleep on a park bench." I wasn't lying. In Preston's mansion, the living room was immense, but cold with feeling. Here, the room was so narrow I could barely stretch my legs, but it felt strangely warm. I sat on the mattress. It sank. It was a little hard on my back, but it was clean. Marcus came in with a change of old clothes in his hands. "Dad, change up. These are my pajamas. They'll be a little big on you, but they're cotton and very cool. They're already washed." I took the clothes. They were frayed in some places. The neck was stretched out, but they were folded with great care. I took off my wet clothes and put on the clothes of my son, the mechanic. For the first time in 40 years, I wasn't wearing silk or fine fabrics. I was wearing the poverty of my son, and man, it fit me painfully well. It reminded me of my origins. It reminded me of when I was also a Marcus, working sun up to sundown to support the family. I had strayed too far from my roots, and tonight, in this cramped tool shed, the journey back was beginning. Dinner was served at a low plastic table in the living room. There were no candles, no wine, no expensive steak, just a pot of red beans, a plate of scrambled eggs with onion, hot cornbread wrapped in a cloth napkin, and a small dish of pickled jalapeno slices. Marcus, Aisha, and my grandson, little Tony, 7 years old, sat around. Tony looked at me with curiosity. The last time I saw him, he was 4, in a casual encounter at the market, and I ignored him as if I didn't know him. "Hi, Grandpa," Tony murmured, with those big black eyes identical to his father's. "Hello, son." I forced a smile, feeling ashamed. I had never bought him a single toy. "Eat, Dad, before it gets cold." Marcus served the largest piece of egg onto my plate. He and his wife only kept the broken and burnt pieces for themselves. I tore off a piece of cornbread and dipped it into the bowl of red beans. The flavor of the beans, the spice of the chili, the aroma of the onion. My God, why did it taste so delicious? Was it because I was hungry? Or was it the seasoning of family affection? We ate in silence for a while. Then Marcus put down his spoon and cleared his throat. It seemed like he had thought about this a lot. "Dad," Marcus said, fiddling with the edge of the table, "about your debts. How much is it?" "Exactly?" I swallowed my bite and blurted out a huge, random figure. "About $300,000. I signed promissory notes with loan sharks." "The interest grows every day?" Aisha let out a small, cold sigh, but she didn't complain. Marcus remained thoughtful for a moment, and then said in a firm voice, "I have some savings. About $3,000. It was for buying a new air compressor to expand the shop. Tomorrow I'll go to the bank to take it all out and give it to you." I froze the spoon halfway to my mouth. $3,000. That was a fortune to them. It was years of saving, sweat and tears. "No!" Aisha exclaimed. "Marcus, that money is—" "Quiet." Marcus turned to his wife with an uncharacteristic seriousness. "The machines can be bought later, but Dad is in danger. He needs money to pay at least the interest, so those people won't bother him." Then he turned back to me, his eyes burning with determination. "Dad, take it to get by. I'll pick up night jobs. Aisha can also ask for overtime at the cleaning company. Together, we'll pay off that debt. God works in mysterious ways." As long as we have health to work, we can make money. Aisha looked at her husband and then at me. Her gaze softened. She took off the small gold earrings she was wearing, the only jewelry she had. I have this too. Aisha placed the earrings on the plastic table. They were my mom's. They'll surely get us a couple of thousand. Take them. Dad, we're family. And as long as we're united, we'll make it through. I felt my heart break into 1,000 pieces. I looked at the cheap earrings lying on the plastic table. I looked at Marcus's determined face. While Preston, the son I gave a penthouse to, was afraid of losing his expensive sofa. While Naya, the daughter I gave all the capital for her business, haggled over $50 and a fake sense of honor. Here, these two children, whom I considered a shame, were willing to sell their working tool, to sell their sacred memories, to save me. I lowered my head to the plate of red beans, and tears fell into the salty broth. Dad asked for your forgiveness. I'm sorry, It's okay, Dad. Don't cry. Marcus got nervous. You don't have anything to apologize for. You raised me. Now it's my turn to take care of you. No, son. I shook my head. Dad asks for forgiveness because I've been a miserable fool. I ask for forgiveness for letting a gem like you roll in the mud while I adored those fake stones. That dinner was the most delicious and the most painful meal of Mr. Clarence Jefferson's life. It was late at night, and the rain had stopped. Only the croaking of frogs in a nearby vacant lot could be heard. I was lying in the tool room, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The strange mattress and my jumbled thoughts wouldn't let me rest. The wall dividing the storage room from Marcus and Aisha's bedroom was just a thin board. I could clearly hear little Tony's breathing and the couple's whispers. I held my breath and strained my ears. This is the moment when people are most honest. Now, without having to pretend in front of their father, they would complain. You gave all of the money to your dad. And what are we going to do next month about the medicine for your leg? It was Aisha's whisper, full of distress. The doctor said if you don't get those injections, you could be permanently lame. My heart sank. Marcus was that badly hurt? He never told me. I'll manage. Marcus's voice sounded deep and comforting. The leg doesn't matter. Dad is old now. And with a blow this hard, what if he does something crazy? Didn't you see how he was shaking when he arrived? I know. He looked so bad, the poor man. Aisha sighed. But Marcus, I'm asking you seriously. Your dad treated us so badly before. He insulted me, called me a gold digger, and slammed the door on us. Why aren't you angry with him? There was a long silence. I pressed my ear to the wood, holding my breath, waiting for the answer. Of course I was angry, Marcus said quietly. Back then, I was furious. I hated that he cared more about money than us. But look, honey, he's still my dad. When Mom died, I saw Dad crying alone in his room all night. That's when I knew he felt very lonely too. He was hard on us because he was afraid of poverty. He wanted us to succeed. He paused and continued. I was the slow one. I couldn't be a big shot like Preston or Nia. I disappointed Dad. That was my fault. Now that he's fallen, if my siblings turned their backs on him, and we abandon him too, how will he survive? We might be poor in money, but we can't be poor in spirit, sweetheart. I heard Aisha sniffle. I understand. Tomorrow I'll ask my boss if anyone needs cleaning help by the hour. I'm going to work hard. If we stick together, we can handle anything. Thank you, Aisha. I'm so lucky to have you. The whispers gradually faded, replaced by Marcus's soft snores, defeated by exhaustion. On this side of the wall, I remained motionless, soaking the pillow with tears. Shame. I had never felt so small and miserable in front of my son. He, a mechanic with little education, had a soul 1,000 times nobler than this businessman father. I had found the truth, a painful but valuable truth. I wiped my tears and clenched my fists. Enough. This test is over. I can't let my son go without his medicine. Or let my daughter-in-law work herself to death for one more day. Tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to flip the board. I'm going to give Marcus and Aisha everything I have and teach those ungrateful children an unforgettable lesson. The next morning, I woke up early with the intention of confessing everything to Marcus before he went to the bank to withdraw the money. But as soon as we finished breakfast, stale bread dipped in milk again, a sound of engines was heard outside. They weren't the noisy motorcycles of the neighborhood, but the fine engines of luxury cars. The persistent, arrogant sound of a horn blared. Beep! Beep! Marcus rushed to the door. I followed behind, leaning on the frame. In front of the crooked gate of Marcus's house, 2 shiny cars screeched to a halt. Preston's black Mercedes and Naya's white Audi. They parked, blocking the alley, forcing the neighbors to pull over and look on curiously. The doors opened. Preston stepped out in his impeccable suit, but with a handkerchief covering his nose. Naya stepped out behind him in stiletto heels, grimacing as they sank into the mud. Tiffany, Preston's wife, also came, wearing huge dark sunglasses even though the sun was not bright, and a look of complete disgust. "Oh, God, what is that awful smell?" Tiffany exclaimed in a high-pitched voice. "Preston, tell the old man to come out fast. I can't handle this air for more than 5 minutes." Preston didn't even greet his brother. He just barked at Marcus. "Where is Dad? Is he in there?" Marcus stood in the doorway, blocking the passage, frowning. "Why did you come here? You threw him out yesterday." "Move!" Naya squeezed past. "I came to sort this out once and for all. I don't want my friends saying my father is begging in this low-class neighborhood. How embarrassing." I stepped out of the house. I was still wearing Marcus's old clothes and my sandals. "Why did you come?" I asked, with unusual calm. Seeing me, Preston let out a mocking laugh. "Well, look at him. The bum look suits you perfectly. Dad, listen closely. Naya and I have already talked. We're going to pay for a room for you in a cheap assisted living facility on the outskirts. The car is waiting. Gather your rags and let's go. Don't stand here making a fool of yourself in front of people." "An assisted living facility?" I smiled sideways. "They want to lock me away so I won't bother their sight." "You talk too much." Naya crossed her arms. "You owe a ton of money. The fact that we're finding you a roof and food is already very decent of us. Marcus, you also don't be a fool and let them take him. If you keep him here and the collectors come to kill you, don't call me asking for help." Aisha came out of the kitchen and stood next to her husband. She was trembling with anger, but managed to say, "Don't be cruel. He's your father too. Why are you talking as if he were a burden? If you don't want to support him, we will. We don't need your money." Tiffany, Preston's wife, burst into laughter. "Oh, please," spoke the Cinderella. "Support him? With what? With leftover red beans or with that grease smell? Do you plan for him to sleep with the roaches?" "Shut your mouth," Marcus yelled, clenching his fists. "I forbid you to insult my wife." Thought. The atmosphere was tense as a violin string. Preston lunged to push Marcus. "Stop!" I yelled. The scream, full of authority, made everyone jump and turn around. I was no longer trembling. My back was straight. My gaze was sharp as a knife, sweeping across the faces of Preston, Naya, and Tiffany. You only care about your honor. You're afraid of what people will say. And that's why you came, right? I asked, slowly. So what? Preston raised his chin. You've embarrassed us enough already. Good. Very good. I nodded with a cold smile on my lips. Then today Dad is going to teach you what real shame is. I reached into the pocket of Marcus's old pants and pulled out a brand new iPhone 15 Pro Max. It was the only thing I kept from my previous life. It completely clashed with my poor man's look. Preston and Naya's eyes widened like saucers. The phone? Where did you get that expensive phone? Did you steal it? Preston asked stupidly. I didn't deign to answer. I unlocked it with Face ID. I looked in my contacts and made a call. I put it on speakerphone. The dialing tone sounded in the silence of the poor neighborhood. Hello, Mr. Jefferson? A deep, respectful voice sounded on the other end. At your service, sir. It was the voice of attorney James Wallace, the corporate senior counsel who handles all my family's legal affairs. Both Preston and Nia knew that voice perfectly. Their faces started to change color. Wallace, I said with a voice of steel, reclaiming my place as a magnate. Where are you and the legal team? We're waiting for your order at the coffee shop at the South DeKalb entrance, just as you instructed yesterday. Good. Come into my youngest son's address right now. Bring the entire asset transfer file, will number 4, and the security team. I have some unwanted visitors who need a lesson. Understood, President. We'll be there in 2 minutes. I hung up. I put the phone away. Preston stammered, pale as a ghost. Dad, why did you call Wallace? What, President? What transfer? What are you doing? Naya clung to Preston's arm, trembling. Brother, something's wrong. Why is Dad talking like that? Don't tell me, I looked at them with a mix of pity and scorn. That's right, my dear children. I was acting, but the play was called The Ruined Old Man. Now the curtain has come down. Welcome to reality. Marcus and Aisha were stunned behind me. Marcus tugged on my shirt. Dad, what does this mean? You're not broke? I turned and looked at Marcus and Aisha with the tenderest gaze possible. No, son. I was never broke. I only broke the illusion I had with your siblings. But with you, I found the greatest gain of my life. The sound of sirens and horns boomed at the alley entrance. 2 huge, black Cadillac Escalade SUVs slowly pulled in, boxing in Preston's and Naya's little cars. Men in black suits and dark glasses stepped out, quickly securing the area. Attorney Wallace got out with a crocodile skin briefcase and bowed before me. Good morning, President. Everything is ready. I patted Wallace on the shoulder and pointed to the cheap plastic table on Marcus's patio. Put the papers right there. Today, on this patio table, we're going to reorder the Jefferson family. Preston almost fell into the mud. Naya was white as a corpse. The hour of judgment had arrived. The air in Marcus's small patio seemed to have frozen. 2 enormous cross-armed bodyguards blocked the gate, preventing outside curiosity from entering, and the inside rats from escaping. Attorney Wallace placed the briefcase on the oil-stained plastic table. He opened the clasps. Click, clack. The sound was small, but sharp as a guillotine. I was standing in the middle of the patio, upright, with no trace of the trembling old man from last night. I looked at Preston and Nia. They were shrinking. Cold sweat began to bead on their foreheads, even though the weather was cool. Wallace, I ordered calmly, show me this month's financial report. Yes, President. Wallace took out a thick folder and an iPad and handed them to me respectfully with both hands. I took the iPad, opened the bank app, and turned the screen toward my two eldest children. "Look closely," I said. "They say I went broke. Yes, I broke the trust I had in you, but this," I pointed to the number flashing on the screen, "is the reality." Naya squinted and her jaw dropped. Preston looked like he had been punched in the stomach. The balance figure was extremely long. 8 zeros in dollars, not in pesos. More than $80 million, Preston stammered, blood drained from his face. "But you said you were scammed, that the stores were foreclosed on." "One call from me was enough for the foreclosure, and one signature is enough to open everything again." I smiled coldly. "I wrote this script. I wanted to see which rats jumped first when the ship sank. And wow, how fast you two jumped." Tiffany Aisi, Preston's wife, who a moment ago was holding her nose because of the smell, now had eyes shining like car headlights. She elbowed her husband and let out a false, nervous laugh. "Oh, father-in-law, what a joker you are. We were only worried about you. We were afraid the mob would hurt you. And that's why—" "Shut your mouth," I yelled. The scream made her jump and almost fall over the old tires. "Don't insult my intelligence anymore. I'm old, but I'm not stupid." I turned to Marcus and Aisha. The two were still standing like statues. Aisha still had the rag in her hand, her eyes filled with astonishment. They weren't looking at the iPad. They were looking at me. "Dad," Marcus said softly. "So, you're okay? You really don't owe anyone?" "No, son." My voice softened completely. "I don't owe anyone. I only owe you and Aisha an apology." The contrast was evident. One group was looking at the bank account. The others sighed with relief that their father was safe. My God, why did it take me a whole lifetime to see this? I returned to the plastic table, where Wallace had the legal documents ready. I picked up a blue folder. "Preston," I called him. "Come closer." Preston walked fearfully, with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Dad, I know I was wrong. Forgive me. I'm the eldest son. I'm going to—" "Shut up," I cut him off. "Yesterday you said your house was too small. You said the guest room had to be a gym for your wife. You know what? You were right. Your house is too small. That's why I decided to help you." I opened the folder and pulled out a document revoking power of attorney. "The penthouse in Buckhead that I was going to put in your name for your birthday next month? I just canceled the deal. And the support for the mortgage on the mansion where you live? I'm cutting that off as of today." Preston's eyes went wide. "Dad, you can't do that. I still owe the bank 10 years. If you cut off the support, I'm going to lose the house." "Then sell the gym," I replied coldly. "Or learn to use bunk beds like your brother here. Figure it out yourself. You're 40 years old, Preston." I threw the paper at his chest. He stood petrified, shaking as if he were about to faint. Naya was next. I didn't need to call her. She dropped to her knees on the ground, crying. "Dad, I was wrong. I was under pressure from work. I didn't mean it." I took out my wallet, the crocodile skin wallet Wallace had just given me, and pulled out 10 brand new $50 bills. "Nia," I said in a grave voice, "yesterday you gave me a $50 handout through the crack in the door. You were afraid of getting your hands dirty with me. You were afraid I would embarrass your husband with his bosses." I stepped forward and tossed the wad of bills in front of her, right into the mud. "Here's $500. I'm returning 10 times what you gave me. We're even. Grab it and get out of my sight. From now on, don't ever call me Dad again." "Dad, no! My husband will kill me if he finds out!" Naya screamed, trying to hug my legs. A bodyguard immediately stepped in, sharply blocking her. "Do not touch the president," the security guard said dryly. I looked at my two eldest children twisting in late repentance, not for being bad children, but for losing the inheritance. My soul hurt, but I knew I had to open the wound to get the infection out. I turned my back on the pair and walked toward Marcus and Aisha. Aisha backed away, startled, but I was faster and took her rough hands calloused by cleaning chemicals, by gripping the broom for so many years. Aisha, I said, my voice choked. 3 years ago, I insulted you. I called you a pauper. I called you a gold digger. I was blind. I only saw the clothes on the outside and didn't see the jewel within. Aisha burst into tears. Dad, I don't hold a grudge. Don't say that. No, I have to say it, I insisted. Yesterday, when I had nothing, when I was a smelly old vagrant, only you opened the door. You didn't ask if I had money. You only asked if I was cold. You were even going to sell your mother's earrings to save me. I turned to Wallace. Read the new will. Wallace cleared his throat and read loudly, in the middle of the patio. By the decision of Mr. Clarence Jefferson, the entire chain of 5 home improvement stores, along with the properties in South DeKalb, including this land and the 3 adjoining blocks, will be immediately transferred to Mr. Marcus Jefferson and Mrs. Aisha Jefferson. Furthermore, Wallace continued, Mr. Jefferson names Marcus as the Chief Executive Officer of Jefferson Construction, replacing Mr. Preston. Mrs. Aisha will receive 30% of the preferred shares. The sigh of Sullivan was absolute. Even the wind stopped blowing. Marcus opened his mouth. Dad, I'm just a mechanic. How can I be CEO? You can. I gave him a firm pat on the shoulder. A man who knows how to sacrifice his savings to pay his father's debts, who knows how to love his wife in poverty. That man has more leadership material than anyone with a master's degree and a snake's heart. Wallace will hire experts to help you. You just need to keep that heart clean. Aisha was trembling. She looked at me and Marcus, unable to believe this was real. Dad, it's too much. We can't accept it. Accept it, I smiled, wiping the tears from my daughter-in-law's face. This is not a gift. It is fair payment. You bought the shares of this company with your kindness, and the value of that is incalculable. This is absurd. Totally absurd, Preston screamed, like a wounded animal. He lunged toward us, his face red, and the veins in his neck bulging. I'm the firstborn. By law, I get the largest share. That old man Marcus put a spell on Dad. Or did that cat Aisha give him some funny stuff? He tried to snatch the folder from Wallace, but before he could touch it, the head of security twisted his arm behind his back and slammed his face against the plastic table. Slam! Preston's face was pressed next to the plate of leftover chilies. Let go of me. I'm going to sue. I'm taking you to court, Preston yelled desperately. I stepped close to his face, leaned down, and whispered so he could hear the coldness in my voice. You want to sue? Go ahead. Wallace has an army of lawyers ready to play with you until you have to sell your last shirt to pay for the trial. Then I straightened up and looked at Naya and Tiffany, who were paralyzed. Attorney Wallace, record my words, I declared loudly. If Preston, Nia, or any of their family dares to bother Marcus and Aisha, or if they insult Aisha's honor, I will immediately cut off the grandchildren's educational trust. They won't see a dime until they're 30 years old, and I will use all of my influence to ensure that no bank or company in this city dares to hire them. Naya covered her mouth, crying. That was the final blow. They could lose money, but what they feared most was their children having their funding cut and losing entry to elite schools. Dad, you're so cruel, Nia whimpered. Cruel? I let out a bitter laugh. Yesterday, when I was in the rain and asked you for shelter, you gave me $50 and threw me out. You weren't cruel. Karma arrives fast, daughter, and it doesn't come on a bus. It comes in a Mercedes. Get them out. I signaled to the guards. Escort, or rather drag, these visitors off CEO Marcus's property right now. The guards were very professional. They escorted, or rather dragged, Preston and Naya to their cars. The screams, insults, and pleas echoed throughout the poor neighborhood. Tiffany, the high society daughter-in-law, broke a heel when she was pushed toward the exit and had to leave limping, looking pathetic as a duck. The two luxury cars sped off, leaving a cloud of dust and total humiliation. Neighbors pointed and murmured, "Tomorrow the whole city will know about the Jefferson family scandal." But I didn't care. Marcus's patio regained its usual calm. Only the clucking of some chickens in the coop remained. I let out a long sigh, as if shedding 1,000 pounds. I turned to look at Marcus and Aisha. They were still embracing, crying. Now, I clapped my hands. Why are you crying? It's time to celebrate. Celebrate? Marcus dried his tears, confused. But we don't have anything fancy in the house. Who says we don't? I pointed to the pot on the table, the one they almost threw away a moment ago. The red beans are still warm. There's cornbread. To me, this is the best banquet. I pulled up the chair and sat down. The old chair creaked. Aisha, heat up the beans, daughter. Marcus, pass me more chili. I got a craving for it yesterday. Aisha smiled, the most radiant smile I've ever seen on her struggling face. Yes, Dad, right away. Wallace and the guards bowed and withdrew to wait in the cars, returning privacy to my new family. I sat there, watching Marcus awkwardly serving me soup. I looked into his eyes and saw my own reflection from when I was young, enthusiastic, and honest. Hey, Marcus, I said casually, chewing a piece of hard cornbread. Tomorrow, take me to buy a new suit. These clothes of yours are very cool, but they honestly do smell quite a bit like poverty. They won't look very imposing for signing over the company. The three of us burst into laughter. A clean laugh echoing in the house with the leaky roof, but full of human warmth. I looked toward the gate, where the tire marks of Preston and Naya were still imprinted in the mud. I took a sip of the light tea and clicked my tongue. Money can buy the biggest house, but only sincerity buys the key to open that door. And I handed my key to the right people. Let the others keep chewing on their empty golden padlock. Man, these red beans are delicious today. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and in what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.